At 3:19 in the morning on the 24th of October 2002, a SWAT team surrounded a blue Chevrolet Caprice at a rest stop on Interstate 70 in Myersville, Maryland. Two men were asleep inside. The older man was 41, the younger was 17. A Bushmaster XM15 rifle was lying in the trunk, behind a steel plate that had been cut with a hole just large enough for a barrel to fit through. The car had been converted into a rolling sniper's nest, and for 23 days it had moved freely through the most heavily policed region in the United States without once being stopped. 10 people were dead, 3 more had been wounded. The shootings had been random in every sense that mattered. The victims were pumping fuel, mowing a lawn, loading shopping bags, sitting on a bench, standing on a street corner, walking into a school. They had nothing in common except geography. There was no surviving witness who had seen the shooter. There was no useful description of a vehicle. There was no motive anyone could identify. For 3 weeks, an entire metropolitan area stopped going outdoors. Gas stations hung tarps over their forecourts. Parents ran children from car doors to school entrances in zigzag patterns. People crouched behind their vehicles while pumping fuel. The investigation was the largest since the Oklahoma City bombing. The FBI, ATF, Secret Service, U.S. Marshals, 4 state police agencies, and more than 24 local departments were running leads. The tip line received over 100,000 calls. The task force had profilers, ballistics teams, helicopter surveillance, and a suspect vehicle description that turned out to be completely wrong. Remember that wrong vehicle, it is part of how this case actually worked. From the beginning, multiple witnesses reported seeing a white box truck or white van leaving the area of several shooting sites. The sighting was consistent enough that the task force issued a bulletin. For 3 weeks, police across the region stopped hundreds of white vans and box trucks. Some were stopped multiple times in a single shift. The blue Caprice drove past every checkpoint because nobody was looking for a dark sedan. Here is the ground we are going to cover. What the investigation was actually doing during those 23 days, which was mostly following the wrong lead. The phone calls the shooters made to police, which the police initially could not trace because they were calling from stolen phones. The single sentence in one of those calls that cracked the case open. And how a 17-year-old's fingerprint from an unrelated crime in a different state 4 months earlier turned out to be the thread that pulled apart everything. The first shooting happened on the 2nd of October 2002. A bullet hit the window of a Michael's craft store in Aspen Hill, Maryland at 5:20 in the evening. Nobody was hurt. 40 minutes later, at a grocery store less than a mile away, a man was killed in the car park by a single shot. Nobody heard a report. Nobody saw a muzzle flash. Nobody could explain how a man standing next to his car could be shot dead in a suburban car park in early evening, and not one person in the vicinity saw a thing. The next morning, 5 people were shot dead in the space of 2 hours, 5 separate locations, all in Montgomery County. The first was mowing a lawn. The second was pumping fuel at a mobile station. The third was sitting on a bench at a Leisure World shopping center. The fourth was standing at a Shell station. The fifth was vacuuming her car at a car wash. Every shot was a single round, fired from a distance too great for any bystander to connect the sound to the event. In some cases, witnesses heard what they thought was a car backfiring. Hold that thought about the distance, it matters later. Over the next 3 weeks, the shootings continued. A child was shot outside a school in Bowie. A woman was killed loading bags at a Home Depot in Falls Church. A bus driver was shot while standing in the stairwell of his bus in Aspen Hill. Each time the pattern was the same: 1 shot, 1 victim. No visible shooter, and despite the largest manhunt the capital region had ever seen, the task force had almost nothing. What they did have was the ballistics. Every round was recovered. Every round was the same caliber. Every round had been fired from the same weapon. They had a single gun and a consistent method, and that was all. Then the calls started. On the 3rd of October, a man called the Rockville police and said, quote, "I am God." He called from a payphone. He called again on the 7th. Each call was brief and contained information that only the shooter would know, but the calls were too short to trace effectively, and the caller identification led to stolen prepaid phones. On the 19th of October, the caller rang the FBI tip line in Richmond, Virginia, and this time he stayed on long enough to say something that would end the case. He told the operator to check a robbery and shooting at a liquor store in Montgomery, Alabama, on the 21st of September 2002. He said the police there would find a fingerprint on a magazine, and that fingerprint would tell them who he was. Hold that, a man who has eluded the biggest manhunt in the country tells the FBI to look at a different crime in a different state. The Richmond tip line operator initially dismissed the call. The task force in Montgomery County did not immediately act on it either. It took a senior investigator named Captain Bud Walker to pull the Alabama case file 3 days later. What he found matched. On the 21st of September, a month before the DC shootings began, 2 women had been shot outside an ABC liquor store on Zelda Road in Montgomery, Alabama. One died. The crime had not been linked to the Washington shootings because Montgomery, Alabama is 800 miles from Montgomery County, Maryland. The names were a coincidence. The ballistics had not been compared. Nobody in Alabama was looking at the Washington case, and nobody in Washington was looking at Alabama. The fingerprint was on a gun catalog left at the Alabama scene. The ATF ran it. The match came back to a 17-year-old Jamaican national named Lee Boyd Malvo. Malvo had been detained by the INS in Bellingham, Washington in December 2001, and his prints were in the federal database. His INS file listed a companion, an older man he was traveling with, John Allen Muhammad. That name produced a vehicle registration, a 1990 Chevrolet Caprice, color blue, New Jersey plates NDA 21Z. This is the moment the entire investigation pivoted. For 3 weeks, every officer in the region had been looking for a white van. The actual vehicle was a dark blue sedan. It had been seen at roadblocks. It had been waved through. It had spent the night in rest stops where troopers walked past it. Nobody stopped a blue Caprice because nobody was told to stop a blue Caprice. At 9 in the evening on the 23rd of October, the vehicle description and plate number were broadcast to every law enforcement agency on the eastern seaboard. It was also released to the media. Chief Moose of the Montgomery County Police held a televised press conference and read the plate number on camera. Hold that decision to go public with the plate. It is the reason the case ended the way it did. At 12:47 in the morning, a long-haul truck driver named Ron Lance was pulling into a rest area on Interstate 70 near Myersville, Maryland. He saw a blue Chevrolet Caprice parked in the rest area. He checked the plate against the number he had heard on the radio 3 hours earlier. It matched. Lance did not approach the vehicle. He called 911 from his cab and told the dispatcher what he was looking at. Within 30 minutes, a tactical team had the rest area sealed. Mohammed was asleep in the driver's seat. Malvo was asleep in the back. The rifle was in the trunk, inside the firing platform they had built from the boot space. The hole cut in the steel plate above the rear license plate was just wide enough for a barrel. The rear seat folded down so the shooter could lie prone in the boot and fire through the hole without the car appearing occupied from outside. That was the platform. That was why nobody saw a muzzle flash. The shots were fired from inside the boot of a car that looked like every other parked sedan at a gas station or in a car park. The distance was never as great as investigators assumed. The car was close, the shooter was hidden, the weapon was never visible. Here is what this case actually proved, and it is the reason it belongs in any serious study of investigative method. The largest task force assembled since Oklahoma City did not find the shooters. The shooters found the police. They called in and told the FBI where to look. The break in the case was a fingerprint from an unrelated crime in a state 800 miles away, and the link between the two cases existed only because the younger shooter had been careless at a liquor store robbery 4 months earlier. Everything the task force believed about the suspect was wrong. The profile predicted a lone white male. There were 2 shooters and both were black. The vehicle description was wrong, the geographic profile was wrong, the motive theories were wrong. The assumption that the shooter was firing from a fixed, distant position was wrong. Every analytical model broke against the same problem. The attacks were genuinely random. There was no victim selection logic to decode. What ended it was a phone call that should never have been made, a fingerprint from a crime nobody had connected, and a truck driver who listened to the news. The rest stop on Interstate 70 is still there. There is no plaque, there is no marker. There is nothing to tell you that on the 24th of October 2002, the 23-day siege of the national capital ended in a car park because a truck driver checked a license plate against his memory and picked up his phone. Sources: Trial transcripts, Commonwealth of Virginia v. John Allen Mohammed 2003, Virginia v. Lee Boyd Malvo 2003, Montgomery County Police Department After Action Review, FBI Washington Field Office Case Summary. Charles A. Moose 3 weeks in October 2003, Sari Horwitz, Michael E. Ruane, and William Rashbaum Sniper, Inside the Hunt for the Killers Who Terrorized the Nation 2003. ATF Ballistics Analysis Reports, Montgomery, Alabama Police Department Case File, Liquor Store Shooting, 21 September 2002.